the Gongfu Crew podcast, bringing together practitioners of various styles and schools and their unique perspectives to explore the world of Chinese martial arts. Welcome to the next episode of the Gongfu Crew podcast. This episode will focus on Baguazhang, another of the so-called internal styles of Chinese martial arts, which became famous in the early Republican era at the beginning of the 20th century, mainly in Beijing. My guest will be Carsten Stausberg from Cologne, Germany. Carsten had the opportunity to spend several years in Taiwan, where he learned from Luo Dexiu, so-called Yizong Bagua, and we will dive quite deeply into the training methods, but also topics that concern Chinese martial arts or traditional martial arts in general. I hope you have a lot of fun with this new episode. Welcome to the Gongfu Crew podcast, Carsten. I'm very happy that you can be here, and I'm very happy to dive deeper into the practices of Baguazhang. But before we do that, maybe you want to introduce yourself so that the listeners know who I'm talking to.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for the invitation. Great to be your guest here. So, yes, for the people who don't know me, which might be many of you, my name is Carsten. I am living in Cologne in Germany, and I have been practicing Chinese martial arts specifically for about 2 decades now, maybe even a little more. But I started my martial arts journey with judo back as a kid, as almost every kid in Germany back then. It was like a 2 or 3 years journey of judo. But then I switched basically to other athletic sports, did tennis and badminton and rowing and basketball and everything a kid would just love to play. And then I only returned to martial arts practice when I was 17. So basically from the age of 17 to now, I continuously practiced different forms of martial arts, starting off with Shaolin Kung Fu and Chen Tai Chi, actually, the Hunyuan Chen Tai Chi from Fengzhiqiang. Also studied it here or learned it here in Germany, in Cologne. And after a while, I switched to an Iranian Kung Fu style, Kung Fu Toa or Kutekodo, how it was called back then. That was basically my first very intensive training phase, because by that time I was studying and we had a great group of people together, which were all practicing super hardcore, and we're all fully immersed in the practice of this martial art. And but as many of those young endeavors in martial arts end, it was also with this martial art that we actually ran into major problems with the teachers, and had the classic guru martial arts thing going. So that was the first big break for me when I left this group. And then I basically have been switching martial arts forms for quite some time. I delved a little bit into karate, some Wing Chun, before I decided to move to Taiwan. Because by the time I decided to move to Taiwan, I was studying Chinese language in Cologne, and we had to do the 1-year exchange with a Chinese university just for language purposes, and I decided to go to Taiwan to do my language exchange there. And that's also the year where I started to study Baguazhang, Xingyi Chuan, and Taiju Chuan with my current teacher, Luo Dexiu, of the Yizong Bagua school in Taiwan.
Interesting. And like you mentioned, at least in Germany, but even also I think in the US, a lot of people start out with either judo or taekwondo or maybe karate or something. And then, like you said, it's usually a long journey through different things until you find something that, oh yeah, this is really what I want to do.
Yes.
Before we go deeper there, because I always find it really interesting to kind of understand why people then choose to train something. I think that's a really interesting question. But before we do that, since you have the background of going to Taiwan, but also you practiced some other stuff before you went there, what term do you use? Like, do you talk about Kung Fu or Kung Fu in general? Do you call it Wushu, or in Taiwan, I guess it would be Guoshu, or like how do you describe martial arts in general? Like, what are the terms that you use for it?
Yes. So I studied Chinese language and literature in Taiwan. So I speak Chinese, I can read Chinese, and I was confronted with the problem of translating Chinese language into Western languages quite early. So I honestly try to avoid almost every Chinese name that I can possibly avoid in teaching. And I basically only use Chinese terms when someone is specifically asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone asks, hey, what's that Baguazhang? Is that like Kung Fu? I said, yes, it's Kung Fu. And if someone asks, hey, is it Kung Fu what you're doing? I said, sure, it's Kung Fu. The only thing where I don't nod my head would be when somebody asks if it's wushu. I would say, no, it's not. That's something different, because I consider the old Baguazhang styles, as well as the internal martial arts, Xingyi Quan and Taiji Quan, not as a form of wushu, but as traditional Chinese martial arts. And I would always then explain this in like 2 or 3 extra sentences, what the difference is there. And I try to just make it clear that it's the internal styles have never had the ambition of being competitive in a sports spectrum, or busy with athletic development so much, but have been basically concerned with actual combat and fighting arts. So I would make the distinction there. Guoshu, of course, as it's called in Taiwan, is also fine. But like I said, I try to avoid Chinese names as much as possible, because it only creates more confusion, and there's a lot which gets confused in Chinese martial arts anyway. So
Yeah, because people bring a lot of preconceived notions. I mean, because technically wushu would just mean martial arts, but people, when they hear wushu here,
yes.
they usually think of the modern kind of performance-based competitive stuff, which is quite different.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. So you already mentioned in Taiwan they would call it guoshu, because that was what the official term was during Republican times, which I mean, it's quite interesting when you actually go to one of the sources, where people speak Chinese, and see what terms they use, and usually it's quite pragmatic. When exactly did you go to Taiwan? So you mentioned you went there because you stayed for more than 1 year in total. I mean,
yeah, I stayed for 5 years continuously from 2005 to 2010. And in 2010, I graduated from my university there. And also kind of finished the learning process with Luo Dexiu with a certificate.
Okay. Why did you seek him out? Because you didn't train Yizong Bagua before you went to Taiwan, right? Mm-hmm. So this was new, but there must have been something that told you, hey, I need to find something like that. And
I was aware of him before I moved to Taiwan. Of course, I checked out before I went. You have to do this language exchange year for 1 year, and by the time I was planning to travel not alone but with my wife. So we traveled together, and she was already working, and she was looking for business opportunities there. Also willing to do a language exchange. So we had a decision to make if we would go to the mainland China, where I was also looking up for like interesting teachers, or to Taiwan, where I was also prepared for checking out certain teachers that I researched before. And Luo Dexiu was one of the like 3 teachers that I definitely wanted to seek out. And by the time I arrived, I actually started off with Wing Chun, with Lo Man Kam. I did that for like half a year before I finally went to Luo Dexiu's class. Just because it was like an hour away from the university that I stayed. So it was quite a bit of travel to do every day, and the Wing Chun class was just closer. But after half a year, I went there, and I never, and then I quit the Wing Chun and stayed with Luo for the rest of the time, moving closer, of course, after a while as well, and then changing universities. And so it was very convenient in the end. And so that's, I basically I stayed from 2005 to 2010, and I started like after 6 months or so. I started Bagua program of him.
What made you make that switch? I mean, it sounds like you put in quite a bit of effort to also then go seek out Luo Dexiu rather than use the convenience. I mean, you said you moved then and you switched to university. So sounds like you actually then kind of build your. I mean, maybe it's an exaggeration, but you built your life around then this practice. So there must have been something where said, "Oh yeah, this is it."
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Luo Dexiu was really the very first teacher in Chinese, or let's say traditional martial arts, that actually knew his art. He was the first teacher that actually could translate every single movement of your movement practice into actual fighting applications. And he did so in the most efficient and powerful way that I ever felt before. So I was like an immediate, okay, I'm not going to change back to any other guy because he's the dude right now. And also, I mean, in 2005, I would say Luo was in his prime as a teacher, old enough to have all the experience you need to be a good teacher, but also still young enough to be super powerful and agile, which is the perfect scenario, in my opinion, to be a teacher. So not, when teachers get too old, it's like, yeah, they have all the knowledge, but maybe they can't really demonstrate it anymore. Or it's sometimes it's not as it could be.
Yeah.
To young teachers, you sometimes have all the athletic abilities, but maybe the knowledge isn't as deep as it could be. So it was the perfect time and to arrive at his class. Also mainly because there was already a strong group of other students in his class, but they were quite a bit ahead of me. So they arrived 2 or 3 years earlier. And I was basically alone when I arrived. So there was no other students to connect with. So Luo pushed me quite quickly to connect with the advanced students, which was great for me, of course, because I got the information much quicker than the other guys. Of course, like 2 or 3 years of training experience, but so that was, like I said, it was the perfect match in 2005.
Yeah. How old was he at the time, just for reference purposes? I mean, roughly.
Like 40, 43, 45-ish,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah, 20 years ago almost now, and yeah, he's in the middle of his 60s. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that people often, because I realize this now here as well by also having a small group and teaching makes a huge difference who is part of that group, and like I said, where in the, let's say, development cycle or where along the journey the teacher is at the moment, because people also shift their priorities. Also when teaching, maybe they want to focus on something else in their own practice, and that has a huge impact. And I think people keep forgetting this.
Yeah.
And they assume like, oh, I learned from a famous guy once he completely mastered the system, but maybe at that point the guy wasn't super interested in basic training anymore.
Yeah.
And people didn't even get the basics because it was boring for the teacher. So I mean, yeah. What did training look like? I mean, so you mentioned there were some more advanced students, but it was a good group. Like, but what training looked like?
So we basically had training 6 days a week. So it wasn't in a temple format or like closed school format, right? Everybody would be busy doing their daytime job. I was studying during the daytime, but then there was classes every night, 6 days a week. And at the weekends, it was twice daily. So one class in the morning and one class at night. I usually joined every class. And the teaching format was quite open as well. So I can't remember exactly, but I think like coaching hours or teaching hours were like 7 to 9 in the evening. But students would arrive at 6 and leave at 10. It was a very open format. And also Luo Dexiu as a teacher is a very relaxed teacher. So sometimes he would be there for 3 hours and lead the class, and sometimes he would just show up for 10 minutes, and everybody would keep practicing what they needed to practice. So we had a lot of foreigners back then in the class, so that was actually great because they came for the sole purpose of studying with Luo Dexiu or studying martial arts, and they were really committed to learning. So there was, of course, a little bit of chat every here and there, but everybody was really eager to use the time in Taiwan as good as possible and not to waste so much on socializing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Baguazhang is obviously not the only thing that Luo was teaching, and it's not the only thing that you learned, but it is a big part of what Luo teaches, right? Or what he taught back then.
Yes.
How would you start with it? Like, what was, I mean, obviously everybody's experience might be a bit, different and individual. Like you said, you came a bit later and the others were more advanced, but how would you get into the Bagua practice?
First of all, it's the school of Yizong Bagua teaches 3 different styles, all the internals, not all, but Xingyi Quan, Baguazhang, and Taiji Quan. And Baguazhang was the main subject of Luo's classes. We had 6 classes of Baguazhang per week and 2 classes of Xingyi Quan. And then the advanced students, after a while, would also add the Taiji Quan practice, Chen Pan Ling Taiji, which is a symbiosis of Chen Yang and Wu style Taiji. But for us, the main focus was on Baguazhang practice. Yes, and the Yizong system is derived from Gao style Baguazhang, which comes from Cheng style Baguazhang, which is the more wrestling oriented style of Baguazhang. So our practice was usually literally 50% of personal practice, self-practice, development of your movement capabilities. And the other half of the class was applications, and more of them. So that's how I studied the system, and this is how I still teach it until today, that the basic practice needs to be your own, your self-practice, where you develop your skills and your work on your weaknesses and everything. And then the other half of the class was always hands-on application training. Like I said, impressed by the knowledge that Luo had when it came to applications, and that he actually was able to pull everything off that we did in forms and translate it straight into working applications.
And the solo practice, I mean, I think when people have or had a bit of exposure to Bagua, they usually think of circle walking.
Yes.
Is that also the core of what you do, or is it slightly different? Like, what's solo practice like?
Yes, I think a lot of people right now call what they do Baguazhang, and I don't think it's always right to do so. I think Baguazhang is there are different styles of Baguazhang, of course, like Infu's Bagua style and like Cheng Bagua and everything, and they are full systems of like taking an individual through a movement practice, but also there is a system and a curriculum of making that person better able to fight or to solve combative situations. And the Yizong Bagua style, you can simplify it by saying there is a Xiantian practice and the Houtian practice. And the Xiantian practice is the circle walking. And this is the practice where you basically mostly work on your movement capacities. You improve your mobility, your strength, your ability to move into every possible direction in space without restrictions. And then there is the Houtian practice, which is not circular, but which is done on a straight line. And it's very short movement patterns that can be translated into martial technique that you then practice with a partner. So if I said it's 50-50 between self-practice and partner practice, the first 50% are again divided in 25 of doing the Xiantian practice, the circle walking, the meditative aspects of it, but also then the Houtian practice of practicing actual workable movement patterns that can be directly translated into applications.
And would you start kind of all of that at the same time, or is it more like this idea, okay, we start with the Xiantian stuff and then you build up to the other and then you have more Hotian and more partner application, or is it always essentially, hey, this is everything there is and let's try stuff out? Is it?
Yes, I can't say always, but for me, it would be always at the same time, starting everything at the same time. I don't think too highly of the idea that you should stand for 3 years in Wuji or Zhanzhuang before you actually start to move. I never did that, and I don't believe in the idea. So we start off with basic hand methods to develop an understanding of the proper body mechanics. Then we learn to move our feet while we move our upper body, and then we walk the circle. And of course, then it's already time to learn the first applicable patterns for working with a partner, and then immediately translate it into partner practice. Because sometimes you have a student that sticks around for 6 months, and in my opinion, that student should then be able to have 6 months of experience in working with himself, but also with a partner, and not, I did 6 months of Baguazhang and we basically did Wuji, and now I can align myself to gravity.
And
nice.
So this circle walking, though, maybe we can dive a bit deeper, because I think when people see this, it usually looks very interesting because it's quite unique in some sense, and even in Chinese martial arts, and you already have very different schools of martial arts there. What's the purpose? I mean, why is that circle walking in there, and this, like, what qualities does it build, or what are you trying to get out of this?
Yeah, as firstly, it's like in Xingyi Chuan and in Taiji Chuan as well. The main purpose of the self-practice is to develop the most efficient movement possible, to develop what we call whole body power, and then to transfer that power into any direction in space that you can possibly think of. And the circle walking is quite unique to Baguazhang, although there have been circular forms in other Chinese styles as well. But the emphasis is really strong in Baguazhang. And I think for me, in my definition or my explanation, is just that the circle walking was also a sign of the times when Bagua was created. It is younger than Xingyi, it is younger than Taiji Chuan, and the combative situations by the time that Baguazhang was created were also already quite different from the times when Xingyi Chuan was created. So Baguazhang was never really about fighting with spares in a group and moving forward in a straight line to fight the next bad village. Or villains that were attacking your village. But Baguazhang, I think, in my understanding of it, was more of a self-defense art, but also an art to solve assaults, or to survive assaults, and survive in a scenario where there could be attackers from all possible directions. So there need to be a method which creates a broader or full spatial awareness of the surroundings of yourself. So while you're busy with working on a straight line in Xingyi Chuan and maybe stepping out into a 45-degree angle to apply force on your opponent, in Baguazhang, the emphasis is really that you need to learn to move into every possible direction in space without restrictions. So moving back, stepping into diagonals backwards, twisting, turning, curling, moving into combining curves, straight lines, and arches. That's a super fancy movement compared to what, for example, Xingyi did. And the circle walking just adds the complexity of free space around you, and I think the method of circle walking really improves your spatial awareness, because every repetition that you do on one movement patterns is slightly different than the one you did before. And there's also, the continuous turn towards the center of the circle. It creates torque in your body. It strengthens your core. It's very special. But I think it's basically a sign of the times that the the complexity of possibilities just grew. And I also teach it like that.
I think that's a very good point, to consider the context in which these martial arts systems and their training paradigms were created. Because I think this is another thing that a lot of people seem to either forget or I don't know, ignore, which totally makes sense. You know, when you have something that was created for the battlefield, fighting with cold weapons, obviously the mentality and the training was going to be different.
Completely.
And obviously then might also get changed over time, but you still have this ancestry in there, which I find quite interesting. And I think it's probably not limited to Chinese martial arts. You see it in Japanese martial arts a lot as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it totally makes sense. Now, the fighting part, the partner work, you mentioned that this would be roughly 50%, which is nice, you know, lots of partner work. Would that be mainly technique training? Would it be kind of sparring or wrestling, like freestylish practice? Would it be specific exercises like, I mean, in Tai Chi people know Tui Shou, or in Wing Chun it's Chi Sao, like, or in Hungar bridging hands? What would you usually do there?
First of all, the practice of practicing with a partner should be progressive always. And if you learn a new technique, you need to start learning it in a cooperative mode. So it has to be you moving and your partner not moving at all first, so that you get the technique and you understand the basic mechanics of it. Then there needs to be a rise in pressure or stress, and this can be done with various methods. In Taiwan, we usually started off like that, like cooperative practice, then semi-cooperative practice, where the partner would move a little more, you know, and then adding some speed and bringing in some different or changing back from different forms of attack that you would have to react to. So always increasing the stress level in order to internalize the pattern, right? We also have Tui Shou, we have Rou Shou, different versions of it. So that was basically the platform of applying all that you know. You know, you would, of course, when you are in, let's say, the first movement pattern, you learn the techniques of the first movement pattern. But after a while, like after a year, you learned like a dozen, and you also know already quite a lot of applications. So the Tui Shou or the Rou Shou is kind of the foundation or the platform form from where you can play with all the things that you learned. And this is also something that I still do today. I use Tui Shou and Rou Shou mostly for playing with everything that you learned before, finding the entries, crossing like distance, closing distance, and everything. That's all in the Tui Shou and Rou Shou practice. And this is basically how we worked in Taiwan. In Germany, I also work with the game of introducing just more than one partner. So we have like practice where you defend yourself against like 3 people, but not at the same time. It's just about, again, creating more pressure than you had with one person, not because of the idea that you can actually beat 3 people in a fight, which is ridiculous, right? But you have one partner standing in front of you, the next one after you're done with the first kind of approaches from behind, then you have to solve that problem, and then the next guy is coming in again from the front and from below, you know, attacking your legs, how you defend that and everything. So that's the next kind of level that I play with. Again, it's cooperative because you know what you need to do. It also increases your skill level. But after that, it's, we didn't do too much real sparring in Taiwan. Sometimes we rented out like a place with mats so we could actually throw each other with full force. But we were all practicing on concrete floors. And most of the time, our practice was just ending where it would hurt. In Germany, here in Cologne, I have a space where I have mats every day, so we can throw each other, and I do so quite a bit. I'm a great fan of takedowns and throws and knockdowns and everything. And I usually practice an application to the level that the people can perform it under high pressure. But then, it's also a matter of the students and what they want it for. And I do not decide it for them. So the reality of my class is that I have mostly older students in between, let's say, 30 and 70 years. And literally no one is interested in like taking the knowledge of the Bagua class into an MMA scenario or practicing Baguazhang for a full assault in the dark. So, why should I then go into that direction and have them spar heavily and like with gloves on and everything protective gear when they are not even interested into it? Yeah, it's so that's the thing. There's a ton of methods that make you better in applying technique, but after you sufficiently know how to apply them, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, what I'm going to do with that now? Because taking that to the next level, to really being able to fight in a cage or to defend against like an assault from the back, it takes a whole different level of commitment, of practice. And I, for my part, have not a single student that's actually interested in taking those extra steps. So I teach it.
And it probably is not only commitment, but also dedicated practice, right? Because these are very different scenarios.
Yes.
And this would actually have been my next question, but you already kind of answered it, like the framework, because people then often talk about like, oh, does it work in the street? I'm not sure what street they are talking about, because it's definitely not anywhere here in Munich, where you have where you meet the Thai boxer who challenges you to a duel to the death, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, civilian self-defense or security work or competitive like combat sports, these are very different scenarios.
Yes.
But if I understand you correctly, then the idea of what you train is also that essentially you have a method that you could use theoretically to apply it in each of these scenarios if you want to, and then you would have to go down that road and say, okay, so what makes sense in that specific context?
Yes. Yeah, the whole system, like many Chinese styles, is very broad. You have striking techniques, you have takedowns, you have knockdowns, you have all kinds of joint locks, and they all work if it's a good system. They work because they follow biomechanics of the human body. A joint lock works. There's no discussion about it when the lock is performed in a way that makes sense from a biomechanical perspective. But then the scenario might not ever ask for a joint lock because you are fighting with gloves and inside of a ring, or getting attacked from two people in the dark from behind. So a joint lock is not your business. So a Chinese style is usually very broad and tries to embrace it all, which is also a sign of the times, but not the smartest way to build a martial art, to be honest. So I'm a great fan of traditional martial arts, but I see many problems in traditional martial arts, and trying to solve all the problems is one of the major downsides of traditional martial arts. So you need to be more specific in your practice if you have a certain goal in mind. So if self-defense on the street is your main purpose of moving into a martial art practice, you should specifically search for those people who teach just that, and not busy yourself with learning semi-cooperative joint lock series.
That's quite interesting, because it's one of the unique characteristics of, like I said, pretty much all Chinese martial arts is usually a very big curriculum, so a lot of material to cover, but also it's not a high level of specialization, but rather it's a generalistic approach to physical confrontation, and you get everything that you could possibly need, but if you really want to go deep, it's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, you have to narrow yourself down. It's Chinese martial arts don't work in a vacuum. It's the same principles of learning a skill that applies to everything else in life. If you want to use it for a specific purpose, you need to get specific, and a style by definition is usually not specific. Some styles are, like for example, Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ is specific to ground fighting or grappling. It's okay. We only solve problems on the floor. Okay, let's say 5% are takedowns, but the rest is like, okay, we want to be able to fight against a person on the ground. And this is already quite specific, but also not really.
And it also, to be fair, it developed out of a much more generalistic approach of the original jiu-jitsu, like the Japanese,
exactly.
which was
also
interesting.
Background.
Now, one thing that often I kind of have to ask the question, because it always comes up with internal martial arts, or so-called internal martial arts. What does conditioning and strength training look like? Is it a big part of what you do? Are there specific exercises? Is it frowned upon? Because it is a point of contention for a lot of people.
Definitely not frowned upon, because Luo was and is a very realistic teacher. And a martial art should, I think Tim Cartmel, one of my most influential teachers, has a good definition about that. He says, if every human has an innate ability to fight, we all have it. We are like monkeys, and if a physical confrontation occurs, we kind of put someone in a headlock. We sit on the stomach and do the ground and pound. That's just naturally within us, within all of human beings. And if you would just fight people who are weaker, slower, older, or just whatever, or the same level as you wouldn't need a martial art. It's like you could defend yourself quite well with your innate abilities. But then a martial art has the approach of teaching you technique and making your movement so efficient that you could possibly, theoretically, defend yourself against a stronger and heavier opponent. And so does Baguazhang, so does Xingyi Chuan, so does Taiji Chuan as well. So it's all based around the idea of making your movement as efficient as possible and to apply your force against parts of the opponent's body or areas where he or she is the weakest. Right? It's usually the way that a martial art is built, so that you can be effective or efficient against a stronger and heavier opponent. But the moment that you approach or dive into combative sports, where your opponent has the exact same skill set as you, but also is the same weight and the same age, and everything is equally distributed between the two of you, you need additional strength and conditioning training to gain the advantage. So in a traditional martial art, which is not busy with preparing athletes for a competitive endeavor, real strength and conditioning training isn't that important. It only becomes important when you fight in a competitive scenario. Baguazhang itself, the Yizong Bagua style, has certain methods that should make you stronger, that should make you more mobile, which is usually done by exercises that use your own body in a very low and long way. So by extending your arms extremely far away from your body, you create longer levers, which then pull a little bit harder on your core, which then over time strengthen your center, for example. Then we also have weapon practice that we don't use too much to actually fight with a weapon, but we use a heavy staff or a heavy sword in order to, again, increase the lever in order to make everything harder for your center, in order to then strengthen your center even more. So this is kind of the natural bodybuilding method that is practiced in the Yizong Bagua style, which is, again, like I said before, a sign of the time, and matter of context, because there was no gym back then where people could jump on the rowing machine to improve their cardio, or like do heavy bench presses in order to become really stronger. And Chinese martial arts systems also basically follow the same methodology of, if you want to get stronger, you just add volume all the time. You practice 2 hours a day and you want to get stronger, practice 3. All right, it's and there's not many other variations that you could traditionally use to really to reach that goal of becoming stronger, more conditioned, and fitter in general. So again, to get back to your questions, yes, we have methods which are basically built for improving your strength, which is mostly the strength of your core and the center. But I would say it is necessary, if you want to really move beyond that level, because you want to engage in a combat sport, you need to add more specific strength and conditioning methods to your training.
Yeah. And I mean, it won't hurt, right? That's what usually gets me here is, I guess, some people also don't recognize the strength training that is built in, because like you said, people use heavy weapons or other stuff, and it doesn't look like strength training that we know, because we're very accustomed to using barbells or kettlebells or stuff like that. But I mean, you now have also a wealth of knowledge, and you have interesting tools for specific strength development coming from other sources. And a lot of people I talk to, they say, I mean, some people use clubs or kettlebells or bodyweight exercise, just depending on also what they like and what fits in with their practice and supports the stuff that they
What's
do
available.
in their Yeah. What about health? I mean, how does this feature in? Because this is also one of the things that gets me. Like, I mean, strength training can also be healthy. Obviously, it's not the only part, but this can also be a part of health training.
Yes.
And this is something that seems to be really important to a lot of people, especially in internal martial arts. What does health training in Baguazhang look like? Is it just that the training itself is focused on healthy practice, or is it something additional? Is it?
My definition of a martial art, not a definition, but as I said before, a martial art should be busy with making your movement as efficient as possible. Efficient movement also always involves full range of motion. Efficient motion always means enough strength for the tasks that you want to do in your daily life. And enough conditioning, involves to be able to move up as many flights of stairs that you need to. So health, I would say, is not a traditional goal of martial arts practice. At least in my understanding, a martial art was busy with practicing for martial endeavors. But if you practice a martial art which is based around healthy biomechanical movement patterns, it is healthy to practice it. So if we develop full range of motion in every joint of your body in our Baguazhang practice for the purpose of applying it in a martial context, it is also very good for your health, because you're not restrained in your movement, and the next time you stumble down the stairs, you might be able to to take the extra step and not fall over and break your neck. So in this regard, it strengthens your body. It makes you more mobile. The intense practice of the movement patterns also improves your cardio. Also, it could be better. And another thing, of course, is just the mental aspect of it, that you are doing something for a prolonged time without grabbing your cell phone. It sounds ridiculous, but if you engage in circle walking or in your Taiji form, and the Taiji form takes 45 minutes, or your circle walking takes an hour, it's full focus on one task, which is something that nowadays is really, really hard to find. And so, yes, I think practicing Baguazhang can be super healthy. Practicing Taiji Chuan can be super healthy if done correctly, but it wasn't the original purpose of the martial art.
And I guess you already connected it also to, mental health, maybe too big of a term, but there you have the aspects of, you already mentioned in the Xiantian practice, like meditation, things like that. That would also be interesting to understand. Is this a separate practice within Baguazhang, that you have specific meditational practices or introspection, or is it just baked into the entire training program?
I wouldn't say there's any introspective practice, like really sitting in front of a wall and basically experiencing the experience. No, it's linked to martial abilities. So I wouldn't say it's a meditation, but it's a meditative practice. And this is due to the fact that humans learn better if they focus entirely on the tasks that they are doing. And just as Taiji Chuan, Baguazhang is also practiced in a little bit of a slower fashion, so that your mind is actually able to follow your body's motion. So the mind-body connection is strengthened through the meditative character of the practice itself. For introspection, I wouldn't go to study Baguazhang or Taiji Chuan or any other martial art. That could be done in a different scenario in a much more effective way.
Which again goes back to the generalization or the specialization of what you want to train for.
And you know the game. In the 90s, everybody was like putting out phrases like, Kung Fu is life and life is Kung Fu. And you can, if you understand Kung Fu, you understand life. So come on, guys. That's just entirely bullshit. And of course, when you are practicing martial art like we do now for many decades, you can link all the experience that you have in your life, your spiritual development, to your practice, and then your martial arts practice becomes a self-practice, and it gets much more deeper. And a martial art for me nowadays is not about being a better fighter anymore. It's my self-practice, where I can link all the aspects of my personality and my history and my background, and it's all in there. But it wasn't there from the beginning, and it wasn't the goal. So right now, when I practice my circle walking, it is also a meditation. It has become a meditation because the movements anchor down a lot of my personal experiences when I practice it. To start off with, if a student like in the first week would ask me, am I doing actual meditation here? So no, don't even think about it. It might become one at some point in your practice, but hey, we're not a religion here. I don't know anything about your experience. It's entirely yours. And of course, if martial arts becomes your self-practice, your personal way of experiencing the world, that's amazing. I hope it happens, because martial arts are just great for that. But they are, again, not built specifically for this reason.
It also goes back to this idea of, I like the idea of self-practice, that you build your own practice of movement, of fighting, of whatever you also want to do with it. But like you said, it's not highly specialized on just one of those things. It's all in there. Yeah. But also, you mentioned your teacher being in his prime, like Luo Dexiu being in his prime. I guess also the practice changes over the years, and then also the teaching also changes accordingly. And I think this is something that needs to be taken into account.
Definitely.
Now, given that stuff has changed, obviously for you, like your practice has changed for you, how would you, and what do you hope for in terms of how Chinese martial arts develop, specifically the way you practice and teach? You do have some influence, obviously, in your school, but you already mentioned, traditional martial arts also do have some baggage, some maybe historical baggage that can be problematic. What would you hope for? What would you like to see in the future?
I basically think styles are dead. So I'm not optimistic for Chinese martial arts style. I'm also not optimistic for any style at all. I think the times are asking for more specificity. The times are asking for, of course, I am happy that I studied within a tradition and that I can actually say who my teacher was, and that's kind of the original dudes who created that Bagua style. It's cool to have, but it has almost no value in the modern world. And I don't know if it's actually if the idea of holding on to a style and hoping something for the own style is something that we need too much. It's we need to find solutions for problems that are in the now, and solutions that we found in the past or other teachers found in the past. They might be still applicable, but they need to be questioned. And I know that we have, in Yizong Bagua, we have like 24 of good teachers out there, all spread all over the world. They teach the system. They all teach quite differently. We all have our own individual approaches to the art, and that's totally fine. And for the style itself, of course, I hope that there at least will be like 1 or 2 students who take it seriously enough to study the full system, so that we can give it to the next generation. But that's about it. I don't think that it's important to carry a style forward into the next decades. But it's more important to ask, okay, what do we need? What sort of practice do we need now? What kind of experience do we have from our ancestors? And how do we need to change things in the now to make it applicable for the future? And therefore, you need good teachers. You need good teachers that have the experience and that learned the full curriculum of the past, but also teachers who go beyond that and go into different forms of martial arts practice and broaden their horizon and see, okay, we need to open up our eyes. We need to check out what these guys are doing, so that new questions arise. And we can then start to even create something new out of it. And I'm hoping for more creation, to be honest. I'm not hoping for preserving the old. That's not my approach. That's also why I started to study jiu-jitsu, why I did wrestling on top of everything. And I'm a generalist entirely. So my basic practice is Baguazhang. I do that daily, but I also practice other forms of martial arts now. And I actually hope for more exchange, first of all, in between experienced teachers, but then also exchange in the students' groups, and that just people get together more and break down the walls of the styles, kind of.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the same thing, and I hope that also maybe the podcast can help a little bit, to broaden people's minds and not be like the frog in the well who only knows one training system and think like, oh, this is how it has to be done, but rather than that, see what other people are doing and think, oh, this is also interesting. Maybe different ideas, maybe different concepts, maybe also different goals. It's fine, but then you can actually also figure out what you want to do with your own practice.
Yeah.
And my thought is still, I mentioned this in a couple of other episodes, that maybe in the second season of the podcast we will have something that I haven't seen done much in podcasting for martial arts, where actually different practitioners and teachers actually talk about the same topic and share their perspectives. I really hope that we can pull off something like that, because I think this is where the true value will be.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe you can also do a podcast with multiple guests at one point. It's
exactly
actually a discussion can evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're up for it,
always sure. Cool. We also started this for a kind of we had a first shot on a collaborative format with Nabil recently in Cologne. You know about it, so where we met for the first time, and I think it was a good start, and we want to build on that. I also have exchange with great teachers from other areas of martial art, and this is amazing to find people. It's great to be the frog in how did you call it, the
frog in the well.
Frog in the well. You need people who are the frogs. You need the in-depth knowledge. Otherwise, there can't be no true exchange. It's you need the experience, but these people need to get together. and find new ways. I still, the thing that drives me most these days is still that I want to get people into martial arts practice, and I don't care too much about the style that they actually do, because I love martial arts practice so much, and I can just recommend it to everyone to start martial arts at some point, no matter which style, no matter what. You will make your own experiences in your style. You might switch styles at some point. It doesn't really matter, because despite making you fit and healthy and maybe improving your self-defense abilities, martial arts is a great platform for your own self-practice, your meditative practice, your self-development. It's just amazing, and it's hard to find it somewhere else. And I basically hope for that more than my personal school to grow. Let's say that. I am always happy when I see young people coming in, when I see the fire in their eyes, and now we're doing like this, and this is amazing, and yes, I know that I've been the same, and it's great, and let's just go from there. And wherever you start, it's a great starting point, and just dive straight into your martial arts practice. That's what I try to facilitate these days.
Nice, and I think that's a perfect ending for the episode. Thank you for all the insights. It was really interesting for me as well. And like I said, I hope to have you back maybe for some group discussions in another season on some of the hot topics in martial arts in general.
Yes, it would be great to do that. Thanks for the invitation again.
All right, thanks for being here, and see you soon.
See you.
Okay, dann mache ich hier mal Stopp. Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you had a great time. The next episode will air next month. And until then, feel free to check out our Instagram account, where we also feature some of the people we talk to, other practitioners and teachers of Chinese martial arts, and anything else that might be interesting in the world of Kung Fu. Thanks, take care, and hope to meet again.